I woke up that morning believing it would be just another ordinary day in my quiet life. The sun eased through my curtains and settled softly on the living room floor, warming the old tiles that had carried decades of memories. My house isn't fancy and it never has been, but it's mine. Every corner carries a piece of my life. Every wall holds a story. Every creak in the floorboards reminds me of someone I loved. My late husband built some of the cabinets with his own hands. My daughter took her first steps across these tiles. I nursed her fevers here. I prayed here. I grieved here. I survived here. So yes, the house is old, but it holds my entire heartbeat. I was folding laundry that morning, humming a song I hadn't thought about in years. I even smiled to myself. It felt like one of those peaceful days that belong to an older woman who has finally earned rest. Then my phone buzzed. It was my daughter. Her message was short, painfully short. "Mummy, I'm coming over. I need to show you something." My hands paused over the folded shirt. My daughter never spoke to me like that. There was no, "How are you, Mummy?" No warm tone. Just a sentence that felt like it was hiding something sharp behind it. A strange heaviness settled in my chest. I didn't know how to explain it, but something in me tightened, almost like my spirit was bracing itself for a blow. Still, I told myself I was overthinking. She was my child. The one I raised alone after her father died. The one I worked day and night for. The one I carried on my back and in my prayers. Surely she simply wanted to talk. Minutes later, I heard a car pull into my compound. Then a second car. I walked to the window, lifted the curtain, and felt my stomach drop. My daughter stepped out, but she wasn't alone. Her husband was with her. And behind them, climbing out of the second car, were her in-laws. Those people. The ones who always found a way to make me feel small. The ones who barely greeted me at her wedding. The ones who treated me like I didn't belong at my own child's milestones. Why were they here? Why did they all come together? I stepped outside slowly, my heart pounding so loudly I could hear it in my ears. My daughter avoided my eyes. That was the first sign. She always looked at me when something was wrong. Her mother-in-law gave me a tight, victorious smile. A smile that didn't match the situation, didn't match anything. Her father-in-law folded his hands behind his back like he was inspecting something he already owned. My daughter finally spoke. Her voice was steady, too steady. "Mummy, we've made a decision." I felt the world tilt. Since when did decisions about my life include her in-laws? She glanced briefly at her husband. He nodded, encouraging her. Then she looked at me. And with a calmness that frightened me, she said, "This house, it's theirs now. You're not allowed here anymore." I cannot describe the feeling. It was as if my heart slid out of my chest and hit the ground. I blinked, thinking I misheard her. But the expression on her face didn't change. I felt my knees weaken. My throat tightened. My hands shook at my sides. My house, my home, the place I built, survived in, raised her in, given away, and by my own child. I stared at her, hoping she would laugh and tell me it was a terrible joke. But she didn't. She just stood there, looking at me like a stranger delivering a message she didn't care about. That moment was the crack. The beginning of the earthquake I never saw coming. And I didn't know it then, but this betrayal, this decision, had been planned behind my back for months. Everything I thought was secure in my life was already slipping away. I stood there, staring at my daughter, waiting, begging, for some sign that this was a misunderstanding. My ears were ringing, my breath caught in my throat, and my fingers felt numb. The words she spoke didn't feel real. They floated in the air like smoke, but they burned into my chest like fire. I didn't see this coming. Not even in my worst nightmares. I always believed my daughter and I were close. Not perfect, no, but close enough that I thought she valued me, respected me, loved me. I thought we talked openly. I thought she shared her worries with me. I thought she trusted me. And more than anything, I thought she would never betray me. I did not raise a stranger. But that morning, a stranger stood in front of me. I felt a deep trembling start in my stomach. The kind that warns you your entire life is about to change. What do you mean?" I asked her quietly, almost whispering. My voice cracked. "What are you talking about?" She didn't answer immediately. She just looked away, biting her lip, as if even meeting my eyes might break the illusion she had created for herself. Her mother-in-law stepped closer, inspecting my house like a buyer at an auction. Her father-in-law clenched his fist in a satisfied way that made my skin crawl. And my daughter, my sweet girl, just stood there, frozen between me and them. I took a shaky step forward. "Talk to me. What's happening? Why would you say something like that?" She swallowed hard. Then she exhaled deeply, the kind of breath someone takes before saying something cruel they've rehearsed. "Mummy," she said, finally meeting my eyes, "it's better this way. The house is theirs now. It's been arranged." Arranged? My heart dropped even further. Arranged meant planned. Plan meant discussed. Discussed meant it wasn't an accident. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a heat-of-the-moment decision. This was deliberate. And the thought of that nearly brought me to my knees. I looked at her husband, the man she married, the son-in-law who always smiled politely but never warmly. He was standing tall, chest out as if he was proud of something. "You knew about this?" I asked him. He didn't even bother to look guilty. He nodded once, casually. My daughter's mother-in-law chimed in, her tone dripping with false politeness. "It's the logical decision, really. They're a family now. They need property, stability. And this place, well, it makes sense." I felt heat rush to my face, not anger but pain. Deep, tearing pain. "This is my home," I said, my voice trembling. "I built this life. I raised her here. How can she give it away?" My daughter's eyes flickered, but she forced herself to look hard, cold. "You've lived here long enough," she said quietly. "It's time for new beginnings." My legs nearly gave out. Long enough? New beginnings? Those were not her words. Those words came from someone else. Someone who wanted me removed. I reached out, gently touching her arm. "Hi, child," I whispered. "Tell me the truth. Why are you doing this? Why are they here? What have they told you?" For a moment, just a moment, something soft flickered in her eyes. Guilt, fear, regret. Then her mother-in-law shot her a sharp look and the softness vanished. My daughter straightened her shoulders. "Mommy, it's done. You can't stay here. They own it now. Please don't make this harder." Those words, they didn't just hurt. They destroyed something inside me. Because I realized then that this wasn't a sudden decision. This wasn't a heated argument that went too far. This wasn't confusion. This had been planned. Behind my back. Quietly. Strategically. And by people who wanted my daughter to choose them over me. And one. I felt dizzy, gripping the doorframe to steady myself. My mind raced back through the past few months. Her sudden distance. Her unexplained absences. Her refusing my calls sometimes. Her avoiding talking about the house whenever I mentioned repairs. Her in-laws visiting more frequently. All the signs were there. I just didn't see them. I didn't want to believe anything was wrong. I trusted her so deeply that betrayal never crossed my mind. But now it was staring me directly in the face. Her husband stepped forward, pointing toward the house. "We've already started moving some things in. You need to pack whatever you want to take. We'll give you time. Give me time. My own home. A home my husband and I built from nothing." I felt something inside me crack. Painfully, unmistakably. And yet, even in the middle of my shock, confusion, and heartbreak, one question echoed louder than everything else. Why would my own daughter do this to me? What did they convince her of? What did they promise her? What did they manipulate her into believing? Because no mother expects this. No mother sees this coming. Not when she has loved deeply, sacrificed endlessly, trusted blindly. And yet here I was, watching my daughter hand over my house like it meant nothing, while I stood outside, treated like an intruder. My breath felt thin in my chest as I stood there, watching them circle my home like vultures. My daughter hovered behind her husband, her face stiff, her eyes avoiding mine. I kept asking myself the same question over and over. How did this happen? How did I lose my home without even knowing it was in danger? I needed answers, but more importantly, I needed the truth. I took a deep breath and forced myself to speak, even though my throat hurt as if I had swallowed broken glass. "Tell me," I said to my daughter, "what exactly have you done? And why?" She looked down at her feet, and for the first time since she arrived, her facade broke just a little. But before she could say a word, her husband stepped in front of her, like a shield. "We're not repeating ourselves," he said. "The documents are already signed. Your daughter handled everything. It's legal. Documents. Signed. Legal." The words hit me like blows. I shook my head slowly. "What documents? I never signed anything. How can anything involving my property be legal without me?" Her mother-in-law smirked, a slow, smug curl of her lips. "It's amazing what can be done when someone is motivated." I felt cold spread through my body. My daughter finally opened her mouth. "Mummy, please," she said quietly, "just come inside so I can explain." Against every instinct screaming in my body, I walked with her. Not because I trusted them, but because I needed to hear the truth from her mouth, not theirs. We stepped into my living room, or what used to feel like mine. Now it felt invaded, violated. Their presence clung to the air, like dust settling over everything familiar. My daughter motioned for me to sit. I refused. I couldn't bear to sit while someone explained how they stole my life from me. She sighed, rubbing her forehead. "Mummy, I didn't mean for it to be like this." "Then how did it become like this?" I asked, my voice sharp with pain. How do you accidentally give away your mother's home? She hesitated. And then the truth began unraveling, not smoothly, not neatly, but in jagged pieces. It started months ago, she whispered. After the wedding, they kept telling me that we needed a place of our own. That staying in a rented apartment was beneath us. That as the only child, I should have more security. I stared at her. All that is discussion. Recommendations. But how does that turn into this? He swallowed. They said that since you were older and alone, the house would be better in our name. That eventually. Eventually what? I snapped. Eventually I would die, and my house would just fall into their laps easily. Her face crumpled. Mummy, that's not what I meant. That is exactly what they meant, I said, glaring at her in-laws standing smugly at the doorway. Her husband folded his arms, unbothered. They simply told me, my daughter continued softly, that it was time for us to have property. And they asked me if you'd be willing to sign the house over in our name. I blinked. I never heard any of this. You never mentioned a word. She lowered her eyes. I didn't, because I knew you'd say no. I felt something crack sharply inside my chest. So instead you did it behind my back? She didn't answer, which meant yes. I took a step closer to her, my voice shaking from hurt and anger. How did you sign any papers? My signature is required. Did you forge it? Her eyes filled with tears, not from guilt but from fear. I didn't forge anything, she whispered. Her husband stepped forward, smirking. She didn't have to. Your daughter has power of attorney. My heart stopped. What? I gasped. He nodded. You gave it to her once when you were hospitalized 2 years ago. You remember? For medical decisions? It was never revoked. My hands flew to my mouth. I remembered. I had fallen ill unexpectedly, and in my panic, I signed a temporary document giving her power of attorney so she could handle medical matters. I never imagined she would use it for anything else. But that was for emergencies, I said. It was never meant for the house. For property decisions. You said it was temporary. Her mother-in-law chimed in, her voice honeyed with wickedness. Temporary becomes permanent when no expiration date is written. My stomach twisted. I felt nauseous. My daughter stepped toward me, finally crying openly. Mummy, I was confused. They kept telling me that it was fine. That you were okay with it. That it was a normal thing daughters do for their parents. They said it would just be paperwork to put the house in both our names. Both. I snapped. But that's not what happened, is it? She shook her head miserably. No, she whispered. It's in their name now. Not mine. I felt the world tilt beneath me. You don't even own the house? I shouted. You let them convince you to put my property in their name? People who don't even respect me. She sobbed harder. They said it was for tax reasons. They said they'd transfer it back later. Her mother-in-law folded her arms tightly. We have no obligation to do that. I turned toward her slowly, my voice trembling with fury. You manipulated my child. You took advantage of her ignorance. He shrugged. She's an adult. She made adult decisions. If she didn't understand the legal implications, that's not our fault. My knees nearly buckled under me. My daughter reached for me. Mummy, please. I stepped back. Don't touch me, I whispered. Not right now. Every moment of the past year flashed before me. Her sudden secrecy. Her withdrawals from conversations. Her in-laws' increased visits. The way she avoided talking about future plans. The way they always whispered in corners when they came around. The way her husband kept asking about the house documents. The way she begged me to trust her whenever something seemed off. And now I understood why. They groomed her. Manipulated her. Controlled the story. Twisted her love for me into something blind and dangerous. And when she finally took the leap, they made sure she jumped in a way that destroyed my life, not theirs. I looked at her again, my voice breaking. You handed over my home. The only thing your father left behind. The only thing I have for security. The only inheritance you actually had. She sobbed, collapsing onto the sofa. I didn't think it through. Thought it was safe. They said it was for the future of the family. I laughed. A bitter, broken laugh. And yet you are the only one who ended up with nothing. Her husband lifted a folded sheet of paper from his pocket, waving it casually. We already filed it at the registry. Here's the copy. Like we said, you need to pack your things. We'll give you 2 days. 2 days. To leave the house where I raised her. The house I protected. The house I cleaned, repaired, and held onto through every storm of life. 2 days. My vision blurred. My heart thudded painfully in my chest. I felt myself sway. My daughter reached for me again. Mummy, please. I didn't want it to happen this way. I looked at her with tears gathering in my eyes. Tears of betrayal, not weakness. You didn't want it to happen this way, I repeated slowly, but you still let it happen. She crumpled in guilt. But guilt doesn't rebuild a broken heart. Guilt doesn't return a stolen home. Guilt doesn't undo betrayal. And then her mother-in-law said the line that turned my blood to ice. Well, crying won't change anything. What's done is done. In that moment I understood something clearly. They hadn't just stolen my house. They had stolen my daughter's good sense. Her loyalty. Her judgment. Her compassion. Maybe her love. But even though they thought they had won, they didn't know me. They didn't know my strength. They didn't know what I was capable of when cornered. They didn't know they had awakened a fire they could never extinguish. As I may be old. I may be alone. But I am not weak. And I was about to show them all exactly who they underestimated. For a long moment I just stood there in the living room surrounded by the people who had turned my life upside down. My daughter crying into her hands. Her husband standing stiff like a guard. Her in-laws watching me with thinly veiled triumph. And me, holding myself together with the last thread of strength in my body. They thought I would crumble. They thought I had nowhere to go. They thought I would accept the betrayal quietly. They didn't know me at all. I lifted my chin slowly, wiped the tears from my face and took a deep breath. Something in me shifted. A calmness, cold and sharp like steel forming inside my bones. Give me the document, I said. Her husband frowned. What document? The copy. The one you just waved around like a trophy. He hesitated, suspicious. Why? I locked eyes with him. Because I said so. He smirked, but something in my expression must have unsettled him because he handed it over. I unfolded it carefully and studied every line. My hands trembled, but not from fear, from rage that was simmering, controlled. Their names. Their signatures. My daughter's signature. The transfer of title. Everything looked official. Everything looked legal. Everything looked airtight. But I knew one thing. Things that look airtight often aren't. I folded the paper. Good, I said quietly. I'll be keeping this. Her mother-in-law scoffed. Keep whatever you want. The house is already ours. I turned to her with a smile so calm it frightened even me. We'll see. Her face twitched. I walked out of my own house. Not because they ordered me to, but because I needed space to breathe. I needed my mind clear, not suffocating under the weight of their presence. As soon as I stepped into the sunlight, everything snapped into focus. I knew someone, a friend, a neighbor, anyone, must have seen something in the past months. A conversation. A visit. A document exchange. Something. And I knew exactly who to talk to first. My neighbor, Miss Olivia, lived a few houses down. She was the kind of woman who noticed everything without even trying. I walked straight to her compound. She saw me coming and rushed toward me, worry spreading across her face. Why, dear, what happened? Why do you look like this? I collapsed onto her bench and told her everything. Every detail, every sentence, every betrayal. She gasped, covering her mouth. They came here several times when you traveled to see your sister, she said immediately. The in-laws. They brought a man in suit, that one with briefcase. They walked around your house. Asked questions. Inspected the land. I thought you knew. I felt fury rise in my chest. They used my daughter's power of attorney, I whispered. They made her sign everything. Miss Olivia shook her head. But power of attorney has limits. It depends on the type. It depends on what it covers. It depends on the court. They may not even be able to use it for property unless it's stated clearly. My heart thudded. He was right. And suddenly, a spark of hope ignited in my chest. They may have overplayed their hand, I whispered. I went back inside Miss Olivia's house and borrowed her phone. My hands shook as I dialed the number of someone I never thought I'd need. My late husband's lawyer. He was old now but still sharp. A man who had handled our land issues years ago. He picked up, his voice firm and familiar. Good afternoon. Is this? Yes, I said quickly. Please, I need your help. It's urgent. The moment I told him what happened, he fell silent. Then in a low voice he said, Bring the document. There are things we need to check. Such as whether the power of attorney was valid for this kind of transaction. Whether it had expiration. Whether your daughter was legally allowed to transfer ownership without consent. Whether there was coercion. Whether the registry even followed due process. I felt my heartbeat lift for the first time that day. And if we find something wrong? I asked. Then the transfer is invalid. And the house returns to you. I closed my eyes, feeling a wave of relief sweep over me. Not full relief, but enough to breathe again. I thanked him and ended the call. When I opened my eyes, everything around me felt clearer, sharper. I wasn't done. Not even close. I walked back toward my house slowly, thoughtfully. My head high. My shoulders square. My heart steady with purpose. They were all still there, in my living room, touching things, opening drawers, claiming space that was not theirs. My daughter was still crying. As I stepped inside, her mother-in-law glanced at me with annoyance. "Are you finished with your little drama? Because we have." I lifted my hand and she fell silent. "None of you are to move anything in this house," I said quietly. Her father-in-law scoffed. "You don't have authority here anymore." I smiled. "Oh, but I do." They stiffened. "My lawyer wants to see the documents," I continued. "He suspects the transfer may be invalid." "Very invalid." Their faces changed, subtly but instantly. Her husband's eyebrows shot up. Her mother-in-law's mouth tightened. Her father-in-law shifted uncomfortably. "Don't threaten us," her husband said. "Is it a threat?" I asked. "Or the truth?" They exchanged glances. Then I looked directly at my daughter. "You," I said softly. "Come with me." She hesitated. "Mummy." "Yow." She followed me outside. When we were alone, she broke down completely, sobbing, shaking, clinging to her clothes like she was sinking. "I'm sorry. I know." They made it sound like it was normal. I didn't understand what I was signing. I thought it was for all of us. "I didn't mean to hurt you." Her cries were raw, painful. The cries of someone manipulated, not malicious. And despite everything, something inside me softened. Because she was my child. But she had betrayed me. Badly. Irreversibly. I held her shoulders, gently but firmly. "Listen to me," I said. "You made a mistake. A terrible mistake. But now you must help me fix it." She nodded desperately. "I will, Mummy. I'll do anything." "Good," I said quietly. "Because this is not over. Not even close." I walked back inside once more, but this time standing taller than I had all day. "You have 20 minutes, I said sharply to her in-laws, "to leave my property." Her father-in-law bristled. "You have no authority to order us." I stepped forward, meeting his eyes without blinking. "Stay," I said, "and I will call the police for trespassing. This case is already under legal review. So if I were you, I'd leave now before you make it worse for yourselves." Her mother-in-law hissed. Her husband looked rattled. But they left. Not because they respected me. Not because they believed me. But because for the first time, they saw someone who wouldn't be bullied. I left my own house that day shaking so badly I could barely put my car key into the ignition. My daughter's voice echoed in my skull like a hammer. "It's theirs now. You're not allowed here." It felt unreal. Like I had stepped into a nightmare where my own child was a stranger. But grief slowly hardened into something sharper. I wasn't going to lose my home. Not to them. Not without a fight. My husband and I had worked our entire lives for that house. And I wasn't going to spend the rest of my days in a tiny retirement apartment because my daughter's in-laws decided they needed something more manageable. No more crying. No more begging. It was time to get smart. I called the first real estate attorney I could find in Massachusetts. She was a sharp-eyed woman named Caroline Whitmore, mid-40s, red hair in a tight bun, the kind of lawyer who smiled like she already knew she would win. She didn't look at me with pity, she looked at me like a case worth fighting. After I explained everything, she sat back, tapped her pen and said, "Mrs. Thompson, something about this smells illegal." "Illegal?" I whispered. She nodded. "Elder exploitation. Transfer of property without informed consent. Potential coercion. Maybe even fraud." Fraud. The word hit like a punch. "My daughter wouldn't," I started. And then I stopped. Because the truth was, I didn't know anymore. How would they even get the paperwork through? I asked. Caroline opened her laptop. "Let's find out." 2 days later, Caroline called me back with a frost in her voice. "Come to my office. Now." When I arrived, she had printed documents waiting for me. Title transfer forms. Deeds. Notices. She pointed to the signature line. "Is this your signature?" I stared at it. My stomach sank. "No," I whispered. "That's not my handwriting. Not even close." Caroline nodded grimly. "They forged your signature." My breath caught in my throat. My own daughter. Her husband. Her in-laws. They had gone behind my back and forged me out of my home. I felt lightheaded. Caroline continued, "And that's not all. Whoever forged this made the classic mistake. Your middle initial is wrong." My middle initial. Wrong. They didn't even know me well enough to get that right. My hands trembled on the desk. Caroline leaned forward. "Mrs. Thompson, this is no longer a moral issue. This is criminal." Caroline filed an emergency injunction immediately. But she also hired a private investigator, Joel Nystrom, a calm older man with a clipboard and a photographic memory. He treated my case seriously, professionally, and with something like quiet outrage. "I've seen sons do this," he said gently. "I've seen nieces, nephews, even neighbors. But a daughter? It hits differently." I nodded weakly. Joel dug everywhere. County clerk's office, email records, bank statements. What he uncovered made my blood run cold. 1. A notarization stamp from a notary who never met me. 2. A witness signature belonging to Matthew's coworker. 3. Emails between Ronald and a local realtor discussing when we take possession. Dated weeks before Ashley told me anything. Every new discovery felt like a knife twisting deeper. It wasn't an impulsive mistake. It wasn't confusion. It was premeditated. Planned down to the smallest detail. And Ashley had been part of it. The investigator brought me a USB drive one afternoon. "I need you to watch this," he said. "But, brace yourself." My hands shook as I plugged it into my laptop. The video opened. It was a recording from inside the Bennett's living room, likely captured through a smart home device they forgot to mute. Matthew's voice filled the speakers. "We have to get her out first. She'll fight it otherwise." Ashley's voice answered, small, anxious. "She trusts me. If I tell her she needs to be closer to other seniors, she'll move." My chest tightened painfully. Matthew again. Good. "And once she's out, Mom and Dad can start the remodel. By the time she realizes, the paperwork will be done." Then Ronald's voice. "She's emotionally attached, not legally protected. This is the best time." My breath left me. It covered my mouth. And then Ashley said it. The sentence that shattered the last piece of denial I had. "She won't question me. I'm her daughter." I felt sick. I felt betrayed in a way I didn't know was possible. That sentence, "She won't question me. I'm her daughter," haunted me for days. They used my love as a weapon. They counted on it. They relied on it. And that hurt worst of all. Caroline moved fast. He filed for fraudulent transfer, forgery, property theft, elder financial exploitation, civil damages. The judge granted an immediate freeze on the house. No renovations. No occupancy changes. No sale. No transfer. The Bennetts were barred from stepping onto the property. Ashley and Matthew were served with legal notices. And that's when the explosions began. I was having tea when the knock came. When I opened the door, Ashley stood there, eyes red, mascara smeared, face pale as paper. "Mom," she whispered. "We need to talk." Behind her stood Matthew, jaw clenched, and the Bennetts, looking outraged and offended as if they were the victims. I stepped back. "I have nothing to say to you," I said. Ashley grabbed my arm, not roughly but desperately. "Mom, please, you ruined everything. The lawyer said we could lose the house." I pulled my arm free. "The house was never yours to lose." She flinched. Matthew stepped forward, face twisted. "You didn't have to go legal. You could have handled this privately." I stared at him. "At what point was I ever part of your private plans?" Ronald spoke sharply, his voice filled with condescension. "We needed that home." "You have too," I shot back. "And I don't have any because of you." Marcia raised her chin. "You're overreacting." I laughed. A bitter, humorless sound. "You forged my name on legal documents and stole my home." "I'm not overreacting. I'm responding." Ashley broke into sobs. "Mom, I never meant." I interrupted. "You meant every bit of it. You planned it. You rehearsed it. You counted on me trusting you." Her face crumpled. "I just thought it would be easier this way." "Easier for who?" "Certainly not me." She had no answer. The day of the hearing, the courtroom was packed. Ronald and Marcia sat stiffly in their expensive clothes. Matthew looked furious. Ashley looked like a ghost. When the judge reviewed the evidence, the forged signatures, the emails, the recording, his face hardened. "This is one of the clearest cases of elder financial exploitation I've seen in years." The Bennett's lawyer tried to argue misunderstanding, family conflict, intentions gone wrong. The judge shut him down immediately. In the end, the ruling was swift. All property transfers voided. Official ownership returned to me. A restraining order preventing further interference. A criminal investigation referral for forgery. And, if I chose, grounds to pursue civil damages. The courtroom buzzed. Ashley cried silently. Matthew swore under his breath. Ronald and Marcia looked stunned. But me. For the first time in months, I felt safe. As everyone filed out, Ashley stayed seated. I walked past her slowly. He grabbed my wrist with trembling fingers. "Mom, can you ever forgive me?" she whispered. I looked at her, really looked at her. Her blue eyes were filled with panic, regret, shame, and fear. Fear of losing me. Fear of losing her home. Fear of the consequences she brought on herself. I don't know, I said softly. Some things you can't undo. Her breath hitched. I freed my wrist from her grip. And for the first time in my life, I walked away from my daughter. Not out of anger. Not out of revenge. But because she needed to feel the full weight of what she had almost destroyed. In the months that followed, I reclaimed my home piece by piece. New locks. Fresh paint. Quiet mornings that finally felt like mine again. Ashley tried calling. Sometimes to apologize, sometimes to explain. But trust is not something you rebuild with words. It's rebuilt with actions, and she hasn't taken the first step yet. As for the Bennetts, they never stepped foot on my street again. Justice didn't erase the hurt. But it reminded me of something I had forgotten. I am not weak. I am not disposable. And no one, family or not, gets to take what I've built. My home stands exactly where it always has. And so do I. Thank you for watching till this point. Comment where you are watching from, I love to know. If you want more stories of betrayal, justice, and unexpected twists, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss what happens next. Your support keeps these stories alive.